I used to believe I was 4 minutes away from being talented. Turns out, I was 4 minutes away from exposing every flaw in my system. What I discovered about those missing minutes changed how I see speed forever. 4 minutes destroyed my confidence. Not an hour, not 10. I ran 102 in the 10K. I trained harder than ever. Long runs at sunrise, threshold sessions left my lungs raw, intervals that made my vision blur. 6 months later, I towed the line again. 101, 1 minute faster, still stuck. And the guy who ran 58, he didn't look genetically superior. He didn't look like a lab experiment. He looked controlled, efficient, calm. That's what bothered me. 4 minutes a day is meaningless. It's a coffee break. It's scrolling your phone. But in a 10K, 4 minutes is a different identity. It's the gap between fit and fast, between chasing and competing. For a long time, I told myself the easy story. He just has a bigger engine. But what if that's not true? What if the difference isn't horsepower, but leakage? If you're into breaking down performance like this, real physiology, real audits, subscribe and stick with me. I'm building this channel for runners who want answers, not excuses. Because what I discovered next forced me to question everything I thought I knew about speed. So I did what any frustrated runner does. I went straight to the numbers. For years, I believed VO2 max was destiny. If someone ran 58 and I ran 62, I assumed their aerobic engine was simply bigger. More oxygen, more talent, end of discussion. It was comforting in a way. If the ceiling was genetic, then my plateau made sense. But the data didn't support that story. Two runners can share the same VO2 max, let's say 45, and still race very differently. The difference isn't the size of the engine. It's how much of that engine you can actually use before everything starts to break down. That concept, fractional utilization, hit me hard. I realized I was reaching my lactate threshold at around 80% of my max. Past that point, the burn escalated quickly. My breathing tightened, and my pace felt unstable. Meanwhile, a stronger 58-minute runner might push that threshold to 88 or even 90%. Different usable range. It wasn't that I lacked capacity, I lacked efficiency under pressure. That forced me to rethink my training. Jogging comfortably and occasionally sprinting wasn't teaching my body to operate near the edge. I wasn't expanding the usable portion of my engine, I was avoiding it. But even after accepting that I needed to raise my threshold, something still didn't explain why 6 pace felt so mechanically heavy. That's when I finally opened a metric I had ignored for years, ground contact time. It was sitting there in my watch data after every hard run, 268 milliseconds, sometimes 272. I used to scroll past it like it was trivia. Then I started asking a harder question. What if those milliseconds are the difference? So I learned about tendon hysteresis almost by accident. The Achilles isn't just a passive rope, it's a spring. When your foot hits the ground, it stores elastic energy. When you push off, it should return that energy. But no spring is perfect. Some of that stored force leaks as heat. If your tendons are soft, that leak is bigger. If they're stiffer, more energy comes back to you. When I did the math, roughly 10,000 steps in a 10K, an extra 30 milliseconds on the ground per step adds up to minutes, not seconds, minutes. I always thought speed meant moving my legs faster. Now I'm starting to see it might mean wasting less with every step. And once I started thinking about wasted energy, I couldn't ignore what was happening in my chest every time I tried to hold race pace. At 6 per kilometer, my legs weren't the first thing to fail. My breathing was too. It wasn't just heavy, it felt urgent, chaotic, like my body was trying to outrun something invisible. I couldn't string together a sentence. My exhale felt incomplete, rushed. That's when I learned about ventilatory threshold 2, VT2. VT2 is the point where carbon dioxide accumulates faster than you can clear it. Breathing shifts from controlled to strained. For some runners, stuck around 62 minutes, that threshold might sit at 6:10 pace, which means trying to race at 6 isn't just uncomfortable, it's above your respiratory limit. When I understood that, something clicked. I wasn't mentally fragile at kilometer 6. I was operating beyond my breathing capacity from the gun. A 58-minute runner may have pushed that ceiling down to 550 per kilometer. So when they run 6 pace, they're working hard, but they're not panicking. Same speed, different internal stability, and that difference changes everything over 10 kilometers. And when I connected my breathing collapse to pacing, I stumbled into a concept that explained why my races always felt like they were slipping away from me: critical speed. Critical speed is the highest pace you can sustain without a continuous rise in blood lactate. Below it, your system finds equilibrium. Above it, you're borrowing against a clock that's already ticking down. When I looked at my race data, heart rate drift, pace fade, that familiar tightening in my legs around kilometer 7, it became obvious. My goal pace wasn't comfortably under my critical speed. It was slightly above it. From the first mile, I was accumulating metabolic debt I couldn't repay. That's a terrifying realization. It means the struggle wasn't happening because I lacked toughness. It was baked into the math I was running on credit, hoping adrenaline would cover the interest. A 58-minute runner, on the other hand, likely has a critical speed just above 6 per kilometer. That changes the entire psychological experience of the race. They're not constantly fighting chemistry. They're operating within a stable zone. Suddenly, performance felt less like willpower and more like engineering the red line upward. But even if the physiology explains the slowdown, there's still the moment in every race where it stops being numbers and starts being pain. Around kilometer 7, the burn spreads through my quads and calves, sharp and insistent. My instinct has always been to interpret that sensation as a warning. Something is wrong. Back off. Protect yourself. It feels urgent, almost threatening. Then I started paying attention to how faster runners describe that same feeling. They don't deny it. They don't claim it's comfortable. They just interpret it differently. There's a concept called RP dissociation, rate of perceived exertion dissociation. It's the ability to separate the physical sensation of discomfort from the emotional story you attach to it. Two runners can feel identical lactate buildup. One panics, the other observes. When I'm honest, I used to let the burn dictate the narrative. If it hurt, I assumed I was at my limit. But what if that sensation isn't a red stop sign? What if it's just information about intensity? The 58-minute runner doesn't feel less pain. He's just trained his brain not to translate it into fear. And that might be the final layer in closing the gap. When I stepped back and looked at all of it together, the picture became uncomfortably clear. This wasn't about talent. It wasn't about some invisible genetic ceiling I could blame. It was about systems interacting with each other. How much of my aerobic engine can I actually use? How much elastic energy I return instead of wasting? Whether my breathing stayed controlled at race pace, whether my critical speed sat above or below the effort I was trying to hold. And finally, how my brain interpreted the stress signals coming from my body. Each piece alone felt manageable, but together they formed a pattern. The runner at 58 minutes isn't necessarily gifted with something mystical. He's mechanically tighter, metabolically more stable, psychologically less reactive. His system wastes less and tolerates more. That realization shifted something in me. I stopped thinking, how do I get faster? And started asking, where am I inefficient? 4 minutes suddenly felt less like a wall and more like a gap created by small leaks stacked on top of each other. And leaks, unlike genetics, can be fixed. And once I accepted that leaks can be fixed, I realized the next step wasn't motivation, it was audit. Now, when I finish a hard session, I don't just look at pace. I check my ground contact time and ask whether I'm spending too long glued to the asphalt. I notice the exact moment my breathing shifts from controlled to strained. I question whether the pace I call race pace actually sits within my current capacity. I pay attention to how I react when discomfort shows up. Do I tense up or do I observe it? This isn't about obsessing over numbers. It's about taking ownership of the system. If you're hovering around that 102 mark like I was, maybe the breakthrough isn't hidden in more mileage or more grit. Maybe it's in identifying one inefficiency at a time and tightening it. I'm not chasing talent anymore. I'm chasing precision. When I started this journey, I thought I needed to become a different runner, faster, stronger, more gifted. But what I've learned is this: the gap between where you are and where you want to be is rarely about becoming someone else. It's about refining what's already there. Small inefficiencies, mechanical, metabolic, mental, compound over time. So do small improvements. The real shift happens when you stop blaming limits and start analyzing systems. That lesson doesn't just apply to running. In work, relationships, and personal growth, progress often comes from identifying hidden leaks and addressing them with patience and intention. Here's my question for you. What do you think is your biggest leak right now? Fitness, mechanics, or mindset? Drop your answer in the comments so we can all learn from each other. And if this helped you think differently, subscribe to the channel so we can keep exploring smarter ways to improve together.